The clash of sword on shield is my song. I am in your armor, your blade. Strike at your foes, and I will guide your hand, for I thirst only for battle. A quote from Gromskagat 4. Gorum is also known as our Lord in Iron. He is the god of battle, strength, and weapons. His alignment is chaotic neutral. Domains include chaos, destruction, glory, strength, and war. His favored weapon is the greatsword. Centers of worship include Brevoy, Lost Wall, lands of the Linnorm kings, Normathus, Numeria, realm of the Mammoth lords, and the river kingdoms. His nationality is considered Kelid. Said to have been born from the first battle between humans and orcs, Gorham appears as a suit of spiked plate armor with blazing red eyes. Though claimed by half-orcs, humans, and orcs as one of their own, the god cares nothing for these divisions except insofar as they relate to battle and strife. He believes in strength and power, the verdict of the sword, and the music of the clashing of iron. He does not favor good nor evil, and the only right he confers upon mortals is their right to fight for their next breath. As long as people struggle against themselves and each other, Gorham's teachings live on. The greatest moments of a Gorhamite's life are those spent locked in close combat, with every moment threatening annihilation. All else is dull and dreary. When the dwarves drove the orcs upward out of the Darklands and onto the surface world in their legendary quest for the sky, the savage hordes fought with primitive human tribes that were all that remained of the broken human empires. In an era of conflict and bloodshed, new pains and passions unknown in all the centuries before broke forth in the mortal souls and carved themselves in broken flesh. Before this conflict, his name was not known, but as human clashed with orc, Gorham rose into prominence as the divine personification of horrible, exhilarating war. Wherever war has risen throughout the world ever since, Gorham has been there to inspire mortals to greatness on the battlefield. Under his iron gaze, the worthy find glory, and those who fall are forgotten. Gorham's priests believed that if the world ever became free of war, his spirit would abandon Golarion in disgust, but he would eagerly return should mortals ever take up arms again. Despite advances in magic, technology, and the tools of war, our Lord in Iron is remarkably consistent, for his focus is on battle itself, not the reasons for it or the types of weapons used. Whether a battle is between orcs and humans, goblins and dwarves, or elves and creatures from beyond the stars, Gorham is there to glory in the vital energy of conflict. Gorham's entire focus is on battle and the crucible of struggle. He understands the need for archery, siege weapons, and stealth, but nothing satisfies him more than face-to-face melee combat in which sweat, blood, and fear fog the air. While Torag represents the tactical side of war, and Sarenrae its necessity as a last resort when evil cannot be stopped in any other way, Gorham is the excitement, the battle lust, and the brutality of combat. He is indifferent to whether his followers are knights in plate mail, goblins wielding dog slicers, or children armed with table knives. Anyone willing to put up a fight, no matter how pathetic or pointless, is worth swinging at. He does not condone the wild slaughter of innocents and invalids, for such acts are the parlance of murderers and butchers, not of warriors. Likewise, he can be merciful, giving quarter to those who surrender, but he is quick to slay any who pretend to submit in the hope of striking while the superior opponent is unaware, and those who refuse to fight at all are barely worth a scornful beheading. It is more pleasing to Gorham to see a soldier fight a score of battles in his lifetime than to die in the first, and if compromises or truces mean warriors live on to fight again, he supports diplomacy over seeing every soldier fight to a pointless death. But he doesn't care for negotiations and quickly loses interest when tempers cool and blades are sheathed. Battles of words and wits tire him, not because he lacks the intellect for them, but because he finds them as pointless and unsatisfying as crushing ants. True challenges are those where lives are on the line, and a moment's hesitation can mean blood and pain. As good and evil have little meaning for him, he may fight demons one day and noble dragons another, just to challenge himself and test his own mettle. Among other deities, Gorham is seen as warrior with few equals, but prone to rage and destruction when he grows bored. Artistic depictions of Gorham are uncommon, as his followers prefer mighty deeds and boastful words to quieter, more permanent works of art. Of the depictions that are created, however, his image, shape, and shadow is often drawn in blood or hammered together out of scraps of metal. A few temples with forges have molds for casting weapons, and the spillover channels in the molds lead to hand-sized replicas shaped like the spiked armored men with Gorham's symbol on their chests. These heavy, inadvertently created icons of the faith are used both as holy symbols and for focusing group prayers before battle. Gorham shows his favor through the iron armor or weapons that gleam or leak blood when touched. Certain legendary warriors are known for leaving a trail of blood and gore behind them, even when not in battle. And sometimes a favored lone warrior, outnumbered by a superior force, manages to survive because his enemies slip on the blood-slick bodies of the dead. Gorham's anger most often manifests in sudden patches of rust that appear to completely ruin a valued piece of weaponry or armor, and he has been known to punish a cowardly warrior by causing his armor to fall apart into a pile of rusty scraps, just as enemies converge on him. His holy symbol is a mountain top with an enormous sword jutting out of it. Gorham's is an all-or-nothing faith. An individual is either brave or a coward. He either stares the enemy in the eye or drops his gaze in shame. Gorham demands only that his faithful constantly prove themselves in battle. If there's no convenient war, daily duels and other mock battles can satisfy this need for a time, but Gorhamites living in a peaceful region tend to wander off in search of conflict, or start some of their own. A typical worshipper of Gorham is a soldier, mercenary, brigand, or bloodthirsty raider, or even a smith who crafts the tools of war. His followers tend to be impulsive, violent, and prone to grabbing whatever they feel like owning. As a result, they are far more evil followers of Gorham than good. Fights between the faithful are common, though they are not usually fought to the death. They are undertaken to establish dominance or claims over treasure, to impress lovers, or just for entertainment. Among the faithful there is often a sense that those fighting on the same side are kin, comrades willing to shed blood in a ritual of violence predating civilization and even their god himself. Gorham is popular across the Inner Sea region, but especially so in the places where war is a constant fact of life, such as Belkzen, the lands of the Lindnorm kings, the realm of the Mammoth lords, and Lastwall. Holy rites among his congregants include ceremonial battles, tests of strength and bravery, beating large drums, and shouting. Most church music is based on Gorham's holy text, the Gromskagat, and is suitable for marching, charging, working, or dancing that favors stomps or other loud footfalls. Gorhamite bards use their magic to duplicate the sound of weapons breaking bones and the screams of the injured, giving any performance the semblance of a battlefield. Evil bards of the faith may actually own disposable slaves that they play for this purpose. Gorham doesn't care about marriage or familial bonds. He knows such things are necessary to produce the next generation of warriors, but doesn't care whether children come from an exclusive marriage or from a polygamous or random couplings. He understands that love can inspire passions that make men and women fight, and that protecting a spouse and child is often why mortals go to war, but he values these reasons no more highly than territorial claims, family honor, greed, or survival. In human communities where his faith is popular, marriage is no more or less common than in other lands, but devout worshippers of Gorham tend to have loud marriages with frequent arguments and much throwing of household items. Some of the church's stories tell of mighty warriors who swore to only take a lover who could defeat them in a single combat, and how when they met their matches, the couples became even more powerful in battle together than when they were alone. Gorham's temples are more akin to fortresses than to places of worship. They are built with thick walls, iron gates, internal forges and stables, and spikes on the parapets, even in the center of an otherwise peaceful city. The priests keep them stockpiled with armor and weapons, typically harvested from dead enemies and kept clean and battle-ready by acolytes. Many adventurers laden with salvaged armor head to the Goramite temple first to sell their heavy loot. The priests don't bother to record what armor came from whom, so it is entirely possible for a young priest's first set of armor to have previously been worn by a fallen orc or a hero of the faith. A typical shrine to our Lord in Iron is a pile of rocks capped with a helm or a sword jammed into a crevice in a boulder. Sometimes the shrines mark the graves of fallen champions, and other times merely a battlefield where much blood was shed. To worship Gorham is to recognize that fame and glory are fleeting, and that all that matters is how one acquits himself in the moment. The companionship of others can lift a priest of Gorham up for a time, but in the end she must prove her powers every day or risk coasting on past glories. Gorham's clergy may be savage, or they may be cool and calculating, yet their goal is always to know that they spent their lives pushing their limits. The church values strength over age or knowledge, and the senior priest in any tribe or temple typically reaches that position by defeating hosts of enemies and beating down all rivals. When several leaders come together, there is usually some gruff posturing and a few brawls until a hierarchy is established. Underhanded tactics, such as poisoning, are considered dishonorable in these bouts. Those spells that enhance the priest, his weapons, or armor are considered fair. The head of a particular area is addressed as a lord or lady, or by a local military title such as commander, captain, or even chief. Priests of Gorham in aggressive warrior cultures earn fame and riches by raiding other tribes or lands. Exiles and those from more civilized lands seek employment as mercenaries or bodyguards, or pursue criminal endeavors such as brigandry that allows them to crack skulls on a regular basis. Some travel the land as monster hunters, usually out of a desire to test their mettle against savage beasts, rather than the interest in helping threatened communities. Priests try to enter combat at least once per day, even if it is only a duel. In especially lawless lands, they may find themselves deputized by local guard captains to help keep the peace, which they accept only because it gives them an excuse to fight. Priests usually are very perceptive and are able to intimidate others easily, but they also make sure to know a little bit of first aid to help heal the body if necessary and mend their broken bones. Those with a more tactical bent also study history, and the cannier ones like to put a little bit of emphasis on sensing the true motives of others to better deal with those tricky opponents. Nearly all of Gorham's priests are clerics. A few battle druids are part of the clergy, however, lending an animalistic perspective and unusual spells to the church's battle repertoire. War bards and rangers serve the church in essential roles and are not considered part of the clergy. Inquisitors of Gorham are very rare and make it their personal mission to chase down deserters and others who flee from battle, as well as soldiers who turn on their own. When they witness others fleeing, these coward slayers prefer to finish the current battle before hunting their prey. This gives the scum a running start and makes the game more challenging, and avoids giving the impression that the Inquisitor is also fleeing. When dealing with traitors who attack their own allies in battle, Inquisitors immediately intervene and, assuming the perpetrator isn't being magically controlled, dispatch the offender and audibly curse his or her name. Adventurers in Gorham's service are relatively common, as heroes and treasure hunters can always use an ally who is good with the sword. Villainous groups tend to learn to rely on the might of an evil Gorhamite priest, especially their ability to channel negative energy, inflicting bloody wounds on all nearby creatures. Gorhamites venture forth to improve their battle skills, challenge particularly revered or infamous champions, to obtain famous weapons and armor, or simply to find opportunities to enjoy the sound of their blades singing against those of their opponents. Half-Orcs, humans, and Orcs are the most common worshippers of Gorham, yet his reach can be felt everywhere that blood and glory are a way of life. He attracts all those who have sworn to live by the sword and suffer its judgments. Those who take up the faith of Gorham forsake the niceties of civilized life to carry the glory of battle to their graves. They reject the idea of old age and instead make the most of the present, exercising their strength and will to display their dominance over others. Though many may call their actions evil, and may be correct to do so, worshippers see such quibbling as unworthy of a warrior. At the same time, however, they are not murderers, and they hunger only for victory through strength of arms. Killing prisoners or surrendering foes is beneath them. Gorham's followers believe that all of life's problems can be solved through martial might. They recognize the place of brains in battle, because stupid people die quickly. They appreciate tactics and the thrill of outmaneuvering an enemy. Indeed, these are crucial skills, but they pale next to the blood and sweat of melee itself. They are not fools charging blindly into battle. Gorham teaches that it is better to retreat strategically to fight another day than to throw away one's life in vain. For a Gorhamite, only when the stakes are highest does life have meaning. Gorhamites identify themselves through their arms and armor. Many warriors of the faith carry great swords, and the faithful garb themselves in metal armor whenever possible to emulate their lord. No matter how poor, a worshipper of Gorham will garb metal armor at the earliest opportunity, frequently claiming the armor of fallen enemies. Once they have metal armor and weapons, they forever disdain any other kind, preferring to fight naked or barehanded rather than use anything else. The more devoted among the faith adorn their armor and shields with spikes and jagged bits of metal. The faithful are frequently heavily scarred, as even the most skilled among them suffer wounds on a regular basis due to the number of battles they fight, and they bear these scars as marks of pride. Few wear gaudy holy symbols or specialized clothing. Their arms and armor are the only identification they need. Formal raiment for priests is spiked armor, preferably full plate, though spiked armor of other types is acceptable in climates or cultures where full plate is unavailable or impractical. Some priests keep a separate set of ceremonial armor as opposed to their functional battle armor that bristles with additional spikes and decorations. This armor is often so heavy that it is difficult for the priest wearing it to walk. Gorham's favorite weapon, the greatsword, makes the use of shields less common than in other martial faiths. Gorham has no sacred text, but a collection of 7 heroic poems called the Gromskagat explains the church's creed. Young priests quickly learn to recite these poems perfectly, as elders beat them every time they make a mistake. The poems may be spoken or sung, and each has a distinct rhythm so a familiar listener can easily recognize them when played on a drum. Though individual translations have slightly different meanings, all translations of a poem use the same rhythm, meaning that in some languages, particularly Elven and Osirian, the phrasing is awkward. Unlike other martial faiths, such as Iomede's church, which records the dates of great victories and celebrates them as holy days, Gorham's church has little interest in keeping track of old battles beyond creating the occasional shrine at a battle's end. The faithful celebrate battles won today and look forward to victories in the future. Unless a war or battle's anniversary is strongly associated with a particular date, such as the first of the year or a prominent holiday, the church may forget about the specific date within a year or two, only mentioning it when it comes to mind or serves as an example to extol. Of course, many number of events may provoke such a memory and an impromptu celebration. For example, a change in the weather may cause a twinge in the old battle scars on a priestess's knee, causing her to reminisce about that battle in a speech a few days later. Likewise, as a priest repels the orcs trying to sack his town, he may exhort the town guard to be brave, drawing from memories of his first battle against orc hordes. Thus, a particular month may have no holy days one year and several the next. Goramites don't have time for fancy speeches, so most of their sayings are short and to the point. Better to die a warrior than to live a coward. While Gorham doesn't believe his followers should recklessly throw away their lives in battles they cannot win, agreeing to fight and then fleeing a battle is an act of an unworthy cur. Surrender is honorable, for those who surrender may have a chance to redeem themselves in a later battle, but those who flee are better cut down before they shame themselves again. Cowards flee, warriors retreat. The subtle difference between these two ideas is lost on many who do not fully understand the nature of battle. Warriors retreat from battle because they want to win the next battle. Cowards flee a battle because they fear death and wish to avoid the next battle. The Lord in Iron doesn't expect his followers to be fearless, but he does expect them to swallow their fear long enough to get the job done. Will you fight? This simple phrase sums up almost the entirety of Gorham's philosophy. If a spindly youth wants to join an army, the priest of Gorham asks this question. If an injured orc struggles with a wound, his chieftain asks this question. Before a particularly bloody battle, the army commander asks this question. Those who will fight are the blessed, no matter how feeble their sword arms. Note that the question is not, can you fight, but will you fight? a crucial distinction. Traditionally, Gorham has little interest in the affairs of the other gods, considering politics a waste of time. He has battled with most other deities, with demon lords, and with other beings of power when their interests happened to conflict with his or they opposed him directly. As such, other gods lay plans against the day when Gorham might cross their paths again. The craftier deities, knowing he is always willing to enter a battle and cares little for the purpose or goals of either side, find ways to get him on their side of a fight, promising him the chance to leap into the most heated waves of combat, allies at his back. Many divine conflicts have been decided based on whom Gorham chooses to fight beside, and that allegiance may have changed over the course of the conflict. Gorham is generally on friendly terms with Asmodeus, not out of any common philosophy, but because the Prince of Darkness often supplies his divine minions with new and more effective weapons of war. He respects Basmara and her strength and devotion to battle. Both deities are more interested in the excitement and the struggle than the spoils of war and the reason for fighting. Gorham is unimpressed by and a bit contemptuous of Nethys' reliance on magic over physical might, but still feels a kinship with the other god and their mutual love of warlike power and the indifference to its ethics. He even feels some admiration for Nethys' strategic prowess. There is no nuance or mitigating factor, however, for the contempt he feels for Norgabur, as assassination and murder are for cowards. He acknowledges commonalities with Suzriel, horsemen of war, as both encourage battle in general, but primarily he sees the horseman as a rival. Gorham's role is to stroke the hearts of mortals so they embrace the glory of war with enthusiasm and bloodlust, whereas the horseman wants mortals to accept oblivion and cold, murderous intent. In recent years, a conflict is gradually built between Gorham and Urgathoa. The Lord in Iron encourages his mortal champions to wage war and become more skilled at martial endeavors, making them more difficult to kill. He believes a valorous death in battle is the proper reward for a life of devotion to such pursuits, and becomes indignant at the idea of seeing his favorite worshippers humiliated by the debilitating effects of disease. Urgathoa takes particularly keen pleasure in bringing ruin to the mightiest physique by lingering illness, or tempting the most disciplined paragon of bodily health into gluttony, and sees no reason that Gorham's faithful should be exempt from her efforts. Her interest has been piqued by the Lord of Iron's implication that his faithful should be reserved for death in battle, and a number of new Urgathoan cults have sprung up in recent years. They pose as warrior sects and challenge other fighters to contests of skill, but infect their weapons with both mundane and magical diseases. Even the lightest scratch may contaminate a fighter with a stealthy pestilence that will lie dormant for months before beginning to slowly and exorbitantly wither his limbs and sap his strength until he is left too helpless to feed himself, let alone lift a blade. Gorham's frustration grows, and he may soon choose to escalate the tension between them, whether by striking at her directly or encouraging his followers to focus on seeking out and slaying her followers. Gorham's worshippers have no particular enmity or friendship with the followers of other religions. If the others accept the superiority of Gorham's teachings, they see no need to fight them, but otherwise they'll happily engage them at the end of a blade. Because their god has fought almost all other deities at times and has allied with all of them at others, his faithful see no need to declare themselves for one side or another for any real duration. They admire the physical might of many of Irori's worshippers, but see the effort invested in such discipline as wasted when it is not applied to martial pursuits.
A few Goramite sects have friendly annual competitions with followers of Felena, the imperial lord of martial training. Though their philosophies differ, they're willing to swap techniques. They respect the tactical skill of Torag's followers and the passionate charges of Eomedean or Saronite crusaders, yet disdain their fundamental restrictions on where and when to fight. As god of strength, battle, and weapons, Gorham makes his home a massive battlefield devoted to glory of these pursuits. The fortified keeps, studding his kingdom, face daily sieges and may crumble into rubble by the end of the battle, and his rolling and blood-stained plains provide a place for his petitioners to wage continual, disordered combat, the entirety of their existence devoted to heat and frenzy of battle. Unlike Caden Kalian's domain, where individual accomplishment and bravery are valued, Gorham and his souls care only for the heady rush of spilt blood and the violent glory of war. Many might wonder why a god that cares nothing for morality would choose, or be allowed, to make his home in Elysium, a fundamentally good plane of existence. While religious scholars have long debated the possible reasons, citing previous battles in which Gorham allied with the side of justice and light, the only clue lies in the fact that Gorham's domain is encircled by a meandering line of ancient weathered stones, each impaled with a glimmering, untarnished Azanta blade. Inscribed on the blades in various languages, including Celestial, is the phrase, "Thus the pledge is sealed, and thus you are accepted, forever with our thanks, come what may." Gorham's divine servants are all clad in spiked armor or actually made of metal. Even servitors of other gods who come to serve him experience a transformation to match his other minions. In addition to his servitor race, the Zentrugts, the following are well-known servitors of Gorham, suitable for conjuring with Planar ally or similar calling spells. Bloody Hands, a unique outsider. A red-skinned, Hezru-like creature, Bloody Hands wears an intricate scale mail that fits like a second skin. He enjoys the tastes of potions and elixirs, especially those that augment his already formidable physical prowess. Though he cannot fly, he enjoys leaping upon opponents from high places and charging through their ranks like a slashing wheel of death. First Blade. This giant, armor-clad creature serves as Gorham's herald. While the heralds of most deities go forth to bear words of their divine patrons or answer the desperate summons of their god's most pious servants, the First Blade marches endlessly to battle. Uninterested in diplomacy or subtlety, Gorham has little need for a messenger with capabilities beyond communicating in the language of the battlefield. While legends abound of the First Blade answering the call of Gorham's faithful to aid them in appropriately glorious battle, no accounts exist of the Lord of Iron's herald responding to any summons for non-combat tasks. Most accounts of the herald tell of gory swaths it cuts through battlefields of heroes, in clashes between titanic armies, or in weeks-long battles between history's greatest warlords. Although it is a living creature, the First Blade is little more than a weapon of Gorham. It knows almost nothing beyond its lord's commands, and goes where he instructs. In many respects, the First Blade is similar to a golem, and the herald leaves but scant traces upon the lands it passes through between battles, eating little and having no need even to breathe. In war, however, its presence and passage are obvious, marked by rent bodies and blood-soaked earth. Saint Fang, a unique silver dragon. An unusual creature resembling a silver dragon covered in spikes, Saint Fang is the dark gray of tempered iron rather than the bright silver hue common to the type of dragon. Patches of his scales appear to be rusted, but the blemishes are actually old stains from Silverfang's habit of painting his hide with the blood of his fallen enemies. Temperbrand, a unique fire elemental. This large fire elemental is made of molten metal and is in near constant battle rage. She enjoys taking her enemies' weapons and melting them within her fiery form, which heals her and temporarily lends the weapon's magic to her attacks.
All right, you pumped? We finished Gorum! But we can't stop there. Next up is a much darker deity. Zon-Kuthon, the Midnight Lord. One word. Creepy. But we're going to cover him anyway. So stay tuned, and as always, have a great day. God bless, and enjoy.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.